basis of my talk is about my preference of body and book, and this is some of my images that I did when I did my MA in City and Guilds of London only about less than a year ago. The actual idea was to get away from what I've been doing previously, which is painting and printmaking, and this is really going back to how I thought about just completely changing from going into the body and getting away from what I've been doing before. So the body you can see before you has been stripped down with found materials, and really the whole idea was to create some theatre come church as in a stage on itself, and the body itself was to do the shrouding and the wrapping. And what happened was that I really wanted to really discover what I've been doing so many years before, which was sculpture, but the painting really had to be put away. So it really was the development of actually following the old masters such as Bernini, who've done in sculpture. And I think what it came to a point where things I really wanted to do for the MA, I really didn't know what to do, so I just discovered things by finding objects. And the wrapping became really kind of semi-biographical for me, being over such a long time. And I think to myself that to do really body and space and also eventually the book, but really I just wanted to be anything quite colourless and not so colourful. And I think to myself that when you have all this situation of found objects, I just think to myself that I just need the idea of platform for theatre. So I began to do this throughout the whole of the MA course, and it really became quite significant for me, where I made myself quite uncomfortable by finding a new space after another. And this is my final space, really, what I'm doing here with the finding of the tarpaulin, with the newsprint, with the fashion dummies, and still using the plinth as a platform. And it's really, to me, it's all about exposure and being raw and finding out what I want to do next in my materials. And that became quite apparent. So each month became a journey, and this became quite close to the actual finished piece of the MA show. But I still wasn't really happy, or still wasn't very satisfied, and so I just completely made much colours as possible. And the thing is now that every time I kind of look at this, or look at the previous images, or this one here, they became quite more humanized in a way, and it became quite ghostly. And I think that was the most important thing, what I mentioned earlier about theatre and church, and about using the presence of space. So everything really became quite bare and naked, as in my paintings and my abstraction, which you don't see. But what you do see here on the floor is a turmeric and all the paprikas and the colour that then is added on with the actual final piece to give that kind of balance. And the emptiness really is the church, and the church is where you enter, with all the shrouding on the right hand side, and especially the actual 20th century lights. And here we have from the right hand side with the books. The books are really about chronicles, really related to my dyslexia when I was really looking into my thesis. So they all became quite apparent, and I always wanted to have some kind of museum or some kind of gallery of my own, preferably a museum of collections like these figures. And all these figures really represent beings of lost souls in previous times. So they're not very pretty, but they've got a lot of character, and it's about resurrection and the undead. So I can imagine these are like 80 feet high, each of them, and they all have a powerful presence on their own anyway. And so it became with the book and the shroud, and it became quite religious again, but not really, just unreligious, uncolourful, and with a meaning that I hopefully want to continue. But I guess everything had to come to sort of like a change eventually. And I think to myself that whatever I'm going to do next, I don't really know. So with the book and the actual yellowness of the pigments, of the aging process of a lost language, this is very important to me to continue with also the shrouding. And also maybe also having my own personal library. So it became apparent that I really wanted to just keep working at what I want to do, and just rediscovering found objects like these leaves, which I did at the beginning of the MA course, because I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't want to purchase any materials. And so wherever I found in and out of my environment, became very, very clear that I wanted to continue in a way that I never thought about before, and challenging myself. And so this is the second phase, in the early of the course, about the books and the body, the resurrection, a kind of Mary Frankenstein story, and how it all just feels a bit uncomfortable, and just this being is trying to take some kind of like presence about itself, which I find is very, very important. And the drawings in the background give some kind of study. So I did sort of like small maquettes of trying to visualize a room with just the leaves and the figure on the left-hand side, and also what was sort of surrounding. So it's like creating a world of my own, really, which I thought was very important. And so again, with the suspended piece, this is something that was kind of new to me halfway through the course. Kept the books, used parts of paper and the books with the books as a shrouding with the ash in the middle between the books, as again a resurrection, or dawn of the dead, or dawn of the undead. And so I began to do the prints. The prints became quite later on towards the course, before the show. So I really wanted a kind of wiry drawing service to give it another sense of identity, another recording, if you like. And because of the recording, I still continued to play like a child would do, and finding like these casting of the stairs and the figure on top, like a Jacob's ladder. And again, another resurrection feel, a kind of ghostly feel, but a kind of friendly feel, and the figure trying to break out in the shroud. And again, just using grey and white. It's just, that's it.